This is the Sisterhood Society podcast, where three sisters talk life, food, fashion, kids, and everything in between. Become part of our sisterhood where everyone is welcome at our table. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Sisterhood Society podcast. We are so excited to be here with you again this week. This week, we're kind of diving into a topic that we've sort of intentionally put off for a long time, just because it's a tougher one and one we've wanted to share for a really long time. But I feel like when something's a little bit deeper, then, it takes time to kind of gather your thoughts about what you want to say and how to articulate it correctly. So we're going to be talking about the topic of grief today. And Tara is actually going to share her story about baby Briar. So before we jump into all of that, we thought we would go ahead and talk about what's good in the sisterhood first. So, why don't you start us off?
I have to give an update about my local mouse hero story.
Yeah.
The mouse died.
Oh no, are you serious?
It actually was a baby rat.
And oh gosh.
It didn't climb itself out on the rope I made for it. And then I went to go check on it later and it was dead.
We didn't get it out soon enough.
Yeah, but it was honestly for the best, because you probably would have either found it in your pool or found it in your house.
Yeah.
And
I was going to say he probably would have drowned regardless, because you have a pool in your backyard. So that is so sad.
Yeah. Local rat hero is not a title I can claim anymore.
That's not good news. So let's get into your story. She's like, by the way, a baby animal is dead. That's good.
I know just a lot of people had questions about it. I wanted to give an update.
Okay, what else?
So I started reading A Court of Thorns and Roses, and it has taken over my life. And Tara's bored with it. I haven't even told you about it because I know that I can't talk books with you because you immediately tune me out. But it is literally the best series so far that I've ever read in my life. So if you are interested in something a little more interesting than your typical snooze fest book.
So one of my favorite YouTubers, she posted the funniest TikTok 2 nights ago, and the caption was, the voiceover was like, "You lie a lot. I like you." And the caption was, "When I'm asking my boyfriend if he's paying attention about the book I'm reading." And she's like, in the caption, she was like, "Just say no so I can tell you again." Then she's like, "You lie a lot. I like you." It just made me laugh so hard, because I was like, that is me trying to tell Phil about books I like and you trying to tell Tara. They're just like, I don't care. I'm just trying to be nice in the moment.
It's just like when you're reading a book, you're so invested and involved, especially these, because the characters, she does such a good job with the plot and the characters that you forget you're reading. And you just, no one else knows unless you've read it. I actually have gone back to Emily, my hairdresser, who told me about him. I've gone back to my friend Jen.
It's like when I watched the Scientology documentary.
Yeah. When Tara watches certain documentaries and is trying to get me involved, I'm like, I don't really care that much. But when you read them and other people have read them, it's like all of a sudden you have a community that knows and understands how good they are. It's so good. If you read it, DM me. Let's chat.
Yeah, it's like if you know, it's like the epitome of that.
Exactly.
I have a funny story about actors. So I have 2 really good friends that love reading, my friend Rachel and my friend Taylor, which are 2 of my closest girlfriends. And we decided to make a group chat called Book Pals. And we were budding reading stuff in the spring. So I brought up ACOTAR and I was like, I feel like Rachel would really like fantasy, and Taylor really wanted to nerd out. She's nerdy like me and wanted to try it. So the first book, Rachel zipped through. This girl freakishly reads faster than me. She reads the whole thing and is texting us are you guys done? And me and Taylor are I think I'm on the first chapter. Then she reads the entire series in 3 days. And these books are 760 pages.
So thick. They're huge novels just in and of themselves. They're
literally
so freaking good.
And she just kept being like, "You guys, I hate you. I haven't slept in 4 days." And she was just literally doing nothing but reading this series. And now it's become this inside joke, because
it took me like 4 months to read book 2. And every time I was reading it, Rachel was like, you still haven't finished.
First of all, I don't know how you did that because book 2 has like a chokehold on me. Like I cannot put it down, and I don't know how you spread it out. I don't know how you spread it out over 4 months. I'm literally 70% in, and it's been like a day.
Yeah, I don't know what's wrong with me, but anyways, I finished it and I really liked it. So I don't need like a long break. I just wanted to read a couple in between that one, and then I'm ready to hop back into. I almost said humpback. What is with us lately on the podcast? Hop back in to book 3. Okay, you need to let Mama pass. All right, so Tara, what's your good?
Well, I got past with Riley and Brecken's birthday party.
Oh yeah.
And so that was a huge undertaking. They wanted an under the sea theme. And I kind of I could have made it a lot less over the top than I did.
Yeah.
So I've realized that when it comes to those kind of parties, that the parents actually enjoy the decorations more than the kids do. So it was not worth all of the time and energy. That's the appreciation level.
I shouldn't have gone so over the top. That is like your last breath words. I could have saved a lot of money on this party.
Yeah. So the girls, my kids thought it was, not that the kids didn't think it was cool, but you know how it is. It's like, nobody understands the time and energy that goes into it more than a parent. So, but they had a good time. I do now understand though, why they have parties only be like 2 hours long instead of 4, because they got here at noon, and I was thinking through the timeline like adults do. Cause I was like, oh, well, they'll eat and they'll like chat, you know, and then we'll do gifts and they'll swim, and all the activities were done by like 1:15. And I was like,
an hour in, and they had already done everything.
Yeah, they were already like done with everything, swimming, all of it. And I was just like, okay, what brings me up like a nature scavenger hunt. And she was like, I'm just gonna leave this right here just in case you need it.
I went and like Googled things to do, and I was like, things to do outside. Oh, scavenger hunt.
The funniest part was
3 gray rocks.
So the funniest part was I was like, well, I'll have him watch a movie because I can watch eat popcorn, and it will take up some time, whatever. And so Disney Plus just recently came out with, they have Zombies 2 and Zombies 3. And it's basically like High School Musical, but half the cast is like zombies. Anyway, I was like, you guys want to watch Zombies 3? And like 3 of the kids are like, we can't watch zombies. And I was like, no, good call.
Oh, High School Musical? How about that?
Oh, so anyway, they didn't watch a movie.
You're like,
but
I
we
forgot. You're 6.
And so anyway, we made it to 4:00, but next year it'll probably be more low key and less time. So the kids all got along fine, but it was a long time to entertain 12 people.
Welcome to my world. Low key and less time.
Less key, less time. My balloon arch was like
beautiful.
Yes.
I mean, I know
100%.
I can make a beautiful party. I mean, I am creative. I got my degree in painting. I don't want to go to the work because it is not worth it to me.
So I enjoy the whole process, and I actually enjoy like setting it all up. But it was a lot of work. So
yeah.
So anyway, but the kids had a good time, and overall
they had a good fun.
They had a good fun. Fun was had by all.
Oh. They had a good fun. That's all that matters. I have 2 pieces of good news. One is so my husband, Phil, and my mom were both out of town last weekend. So I asked my dad if he wanted to get dinner, and we just had the cutest little date night. And it was just such what the Gen Zers call, what the kids are saying, core memory. I feel like I'll always remember it. We went to this place that's like farm to table in downtown Nashville called Husk. And they sat us on the front. It's an old like home turned into a restaurant, which there's kind of a lot of those, I feel like, in Nashville. But they sat us on the front porch, and there was no humidity, and it was like 7:15. The sun was setting. It was very romantic to be with Dad. I'm like, suddenly this sounds like an actual date. No, but we had like really great conversation, and I don't know, it was just very intentional, and I just really enjoyed the time. And my second piece of news is I kept up with my bargain of becoming a TikTok star. So it only took me like 6 weeks. I think I said it on the podcast like at the beginning of May. I don't even remember when I talked about it. But I decided to jump headfirst into being a booktuber or book talker, sorry. And it's going well. I've only been on for 2 days, but I've already doubled my audience. I have 1 viral video. What's hilarious is I've actually lost 25 followers on Instagram, LOL. Like, I don't understand how I don't understand how Instagram's like push reels, and then I do, and people are like, bye. I'm like, Instagram, you're such a scam. Like, honestly, like, why? It like literally makes no sense. Like, TikTok rewards you for making good content, and Instagram's like, oh, let me remind all the people that hate you to unfollow. So that's literally how it feels. Like, I'm just
Come
like
to the top of the list and they're like, oh, that's right, I don't like her.
Oh, that's right. She's so annoying. Let me unfollow her. Mark Zuckerberg is like, I'm out for Kate Lawson. She keeps posting these boring book videos.
Zuckerberg's been out for us for a long time. So.
I know. I'm just teasing. So anyways, the rage I would like to unleash someday of being like, what you've done to small businesses. The stress, the panic. So yeah, TikTok is actually like, it's very exciting. The world of TikTok, I'm really enjoying. I don't know what I'm trying to say. I'm really enjoying it. It's very riveting. And it's not just like Royal and Reese customers going to follow me on TikTok. It's like new people's names I don't recognize. So I can tell that TikTok's pushing my content out. And obviously all of my videos have more views than I have followers. So clearly TikTok's like giving me a little nudge. You know what I mean?
I always think it's interesting with TikTok that you go on there to watch strangers, but you go on Instagram to watch your friends. It's just such like a weird concept because you don't really get on TikTok to watch your friends' videos typically.
Which
You're
just
like
means
scrolling.
my friends hate me because they're following.
They
Like,
just
that's
mean
actually
it's like
confirming it even more. It's like, what?
but it's like opposite,
Yeah.
opposite of each other, which is interesting.
Yeah, I don't follow anybody on TikTok well, that's not true. I guess I follow my friends on TikTok, but a lot of them don't make videos.
Yeah, true.
So like I have my friends on TikTok, but they're not like making content.
Because
So
they're just watching other people.
they're just watching other strangers. It's true. Okay, anyways. So yeah, I'll keep you guys abreast, my favorite word, of the half.
Next week we can see where you're at. 355 as of this morning, right?
Yeah, let me check my follower count, guys. This is very exciting. Every time I open it, I have more. Okay, so 359.
It's gone up for since I looked.
And yeah, my last video has 5,839 views. And it has 44 saves. People are saving my videos. That's so exciting. Anyways, okay, so not to just go from like happy to sad, but I'm sorry. We have a sponsor for this video.
Isn't that exciting?
Mm-hmm.
We have a sponsor.
We have a new brand that we've partnered with that emailed us this week to give us an affiliate code and wanted to partner with the podcast, which is, you guys, like, what's happening? We're moving up in the world. Just 3 months, or how long have we been doing this? 3 months?
Since March 8th.
Wow.
March 9th.
And we have like a handful of sponsors. So Whitney is actually going to share about our first sponsor because it was one of her favorite products. And I actually have some on the way that I get to test. So we're all going to share about it as we use the products. But Whitney has a personal connection to the company. So go ahead.
So the company is called Just Ingredients. It was made by this gal in Utah. Those gals in Utah, they are.
I was gonna say, wow,
they're hustling.
They're really good.
You know, those Utah moms, one, gorgeous, stunning, so fit, and two, boy, do they know how to make money. You know what I mean? Like, we need to figure out how to become a Utah mom. That's okay. Keep going.
So anyway, she went through this like long bout of depression, like a really serious bout of it, and finally was able to kind of come out of it, but realized after she had kind of done a deep dive into health, she realized how many products are endocrine disruptors, as well as like the food, the products she uses, the cleaning products, anything in your house. So she did like a full-on deep dive, and she started realizing that she can heal her body with whole, organic, clean foods. And so she decided to start a company of her own, and she sells products like deodorants, facial serums, excuse me, she does protein powders. I used her pre-workout. I also used her face serums. She also does like a hot chocolate. They're all organic ingredients, all made from whole foods. She has adaptogens in a lot of the products. They're sweetened with stevia and monk fruit as opposed to like sugar. I just love them. Literally everything I get from her. It's just, I feel like I can relax in knowing that what I am putting in my body is actually going to improve it, instead of being like, oh no, this could like disrupt my hormones. And I mean, as I've talked about before, I've had like issues with thyroid stuff, and I'm just like, I'm done with worrying about like everything that is bothering me. And instead I'm going to switch over to like clean things. So I really enjoy them. I love her pre-workout. I was just telling Tara that there was a week where I wasn't taking it, the pre-workouts, and I noticed a huge difference in trying to get through a workout. My recovery, my muscles were dying. Like, it was like the first time I had sore muscles in a really long time. And also just being exhausted in general afterwards, like full recovery was so much easier when I had been taking pre-workout and L-glutamine. And this actually has, I think, oh wait, no, this one doesn't have L-glutamine.
I was going to say really quickly, for those of us laymen that don't know what a pre-workout is, what was I going to say? For those of us that aren't, don't know what that is, can you explain what a pre-workout is?
Oh, okay. It's exactly what it sounds like. You take it before working out.
What do you mix?
But what does it do?
Okay. So you literally do a scoop of it and put it in a glass of 8 ounces of water, and you drink it about 30 minutes before your workout. And it has caffeine in it, so it kind of just gives you the extra boost. I know I like to work out in the afternoons, or I mean in the evenings. I don't like doing it in the early mornings, so I'm too tired to push myself through a workout. So I like doing my workouts in the evening, and it just helps me get that added boost of caffeine so I can actually like push myself more. But this one especially, it has amino acids in it that help build your muscles, which is awesome. This one has like beetroot in it, ginseng, beta alanine, citrulline malate, maca root, and taurine. They're all super natural things that are literally amino acids that help build your muscles, help muscle recovery. So that way you don't get as tired throughout your workout, that you can feel like you can actually lift more. If you're working for like building muscle, but also the recovery aspect. So you're not getting as sore after a workout. So like, I remember in high school, I would like be on volleyball. The first day after I've come back, I would be dying. I could barely even like walk up the steps. Had I known anything about like pre-workout or things like that, I feel like I would have sailed through it so much easier, because it just
I remember that.
your body, it's giving your body what it needs in order to build muscles and just recover from it.
I used to feel like someone had like taken like knives and stabbed my legs after we'd done like Hell Week or just like practices in general, but I'd been off 2 weeks. It was wild. So the more you know. Okay, so our code for Just Ingredients is Royal at checkout for 10% off. You guys can grab it. I really need that pre-workout because I almost have to work out in the mornings because Phil is gone a lot of evenings, but when he's home, it's like literally the only time we see each other. So I tried to be available in the evenings to spend time with him. So, but literally when my alarm goes up at 6:30, I'm just like, no, I do not want to go to the gym. It's like the worst feeling. So I feel like if I had a exciting routine to look forward to.
Yeah.
So I'll be using
it. Literally, from the moment I got a pre-workout to now, I feel like I've built so much more muscle, like within the last few weeks. It has literally changed the game for me, and it's really helped me get through it. So I highly advise it. She has more than just pre-workout on her website. But it's just like a brand I can depend on, kind of like our Sunage and stuff. Like, it's a brand that I know that is clean. It's working for me, not against me. And I've noticed a huge difference.
Gorgeous. Okay. If you guys would like to use our code, it's just Ingredients is the company and Royal is the code. Okay. So to jump right in, we just gave them like a beautiful review. Like, that was just like, we just really boosted.
It's just something we believe in,
I know. We're going to jump right into our story today. So we actually filmed this episode like 2 years ago. Almost, or a year and a half ago.
I don't know if it was dedicated fully to that, but yeah, it was.
Yeah, it was about grief in general. And like the three of us just basically sobbed the entire time we talked. And then afterwards we were like puffy and just overwhelmed. And then we were like, I don't know if anyone's going to listen to this. It's just like a lot. But it was one of the first times the three of us had really talked about what happened with Briar. And unfortunately, which we'll talk about this in a second, our grandmother died a week after Briar passed away. A week after or 2 weeks after?
Mm-hmm.
2. So there's just a lot of raw emotions around this story. But yeah, so we're going to hop into Tara's story about grief. So do you want to kind of share what happened and where you are at now?
Yeah, I made notes because I was trying to, when it's been several years now, you're trying to like go back and remember all what you were thinking and feeling at the time.
Right.
But we had gotten pregnant with Briar, and her and Britton would have only been like 16 weeks apart. 16 months apart.
I was like, wow, how does that even work?
16 months apart. So they were going to be really, really close in age. And everything was super normal with pregnancy. Like, it was as normal as any of the other ones had been. In October, I got pregnant in September. In October of that year, I got like deathly ill with the flu, felt like super sick, basically dry heaving, had texted my doctor, like, is there anything I should be worried about? And she's like, as long as you can at least be getting fluids and like urinating in a 24-hour period, you're fine. We don't need to see you, whatever. So we went to California in January for a family trip. And I got back from that trip. And it was like, that would have been my 20-week appointment. And, but Britton had just turned 1 on the 5th of January. So we went to the beach to take her family photo, or take her 1-year pictures, and then take like a family picture. We had one of Mom's friends take them for us. Well, she hated the sand and the pictures went terrible, but we have like one picture of all of us, sitting on the rocks, like at the beach. And it's the only photo of us technically with like Briar in it.
Yeah.
And so right after that appointment, or right after that trip, I went in for my 20-week appointment. They said everything was fine, that she was tracking normal. They did all the measurements and things like that. They said she was in like the 34 percentile for size and whatever, and everything was fine. I think it wasn't even a week later. I think it was later. I think it was that weekend. I had a really bad headache. I'd taken Tylenol for, when you're pregnant, you can't take anything but Tylenol. And it just wasn't going away after like 6 or 8 hours. Mom randomly was like, you really need to check your blood pressure. Like, that's not normal.
Mm-hmm.
You should see if you can get your blood pressure checked. So I went and I tried to go to Walgreens, and they didn't have a cuff or something like that. I forget exactly what it was, but I called the after hours nurse, and they're like, just go straight to the ER. It could be your blood pressure. So we went to the ER. Brian stayed back with the kids, and my blood pressure was like 180 over like 100 something. It was something super high. It was in the 180s.
And your normal blood pressure should be like
120 over 80.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was like 180 over 100 or something. It was something, whatever the top number was in the 180s. So they immediately admitted me, and got my blood pressure down. gave me some blood pressure meds, and I ended up being in the hospital for like 2 or 3 days here in town. And my doctor came in the next morning and basically said, you have preeclampsia, and you're not going to make it to 40 weeks. We're going to try to get you as far as we possibly can. But the baby's not going to make it to 40 weeks. You're going to deliver early and we don't usually see preeclampsia develop this early on in pregnancy. And so, I can't essentially treat you anymore. We're going to send you to a specialist in Peoria. So, that was a little terrifying, like to have that be your first, after just hearing that everything's fine. And then like 5 days later, have this coming up.
Right.
And so typically preeclampsia doesn't usually start until like 26 or 27 weeks. And I think I was right around 20. I was a little over 21, I believe is what it was. So, they scheduled me in Peoria to meet the specialist, and our cousin, her mother-in-law worked for that doctor's group. And when she saw on the, schedule that I was with like this one doctor, she immediately was like, no, we're going to switch you and we're going to put you with Dr. Leonardi, she was technically his nurse. So she switched the schedule for me, which was such a huge blessing in all of this, because he ended up being my doctor with Briggs and everything. And it was just like the perfect fit. So it was just one of those situations that was like a God moment, because had she not been there, not that the other doctor wouldn't have been okay, but just for analytical as Brian is, like his bedside manner just fit really well. So we went over there, they did a sonogram. They initially told us that they thought maybe she had some type of genetic, and then they left the room. So we sat with that for like an hour, and they said they wanted to send us down to the cardiologist and do another sono. So it was like a 6-hour day of like all these appointments, so much emotion going in and out. We met with the cardiologist. They said her heart was fine, but that the placenta was not allowing enough like blood flow to her. It was like restricting the blood flow. And so it was restricting her growth. So she was growing, but she was growing smaller than she was supposed to. So after we met with them, we sat down with Dr. Leonardi, and he basically just said, we're going to put you on bed rest. We're going to monitor you really closely. We will essentially get you as far as we possibly can. And then, you're my patient number first and foremost. So we will do whatever we have to do to make sure that you're here and with us. And if that means we have to take her early, then we will.
Mm-hmm.
And so,
how did that make you feel when he said that?
It's a weird feeling, because it's just like, at that point, it's just super scary, because you just feel like you're now walking on eggshells with every single thing, because they wanted me to really not be working, not have any stress, not be up and around tons of movement.
Which I could still joke at that time of around.
Yeah. Because
not working now would be really different than you not working. Like Correct. You're about to have a surgery in 2 weeks, and I don't feel nervous about you being on bed rest at all. Like me and Whitney are, we're going to handle it. But I just mean, like, back then we had 45 employees, and a lot going on. Stress was like the definition of the business at the time. So
I'm just telling you to be on bed rest and don't handle the kids, like that alone causes stress in the brain. Like,
and your kids were so little.
Yeah. With 3 little ones at home. And
when you were at the hospital, I came home during that time to help with the babies with mom. So me and Sarah were helping mom in the evenings to kind of be like second shift.
Yeah.
And Britain was like a year, right? And then
she was just she wasn't even 13 months yet.
So then how old would Brecken and Briley have been?
She was 1, so Briley would have been 3 and Brecken would have been 5.
Yeah. Okay. So really little.
Yeah. So basically they put me on bed rest, and they had said essentially that they wanted to get me to 26 weeks. That's what they were at least trying to get me to. That 24 weeks was viability. And I was a little over 22 at that point. But they needed 23 was doable, but they would really like to get me to 24. Mm-hmm. And so because essentially like the needles and the instruments that they need have to, they have to have them at so many weeks in order for those to be small enough to be able to work on the babies. So they sent me home, basically said, take it easy. We're going to monitor I had to monitor my blood pressure. I had to start taking blood pressure meds. And they were going to essentially keep an eye on me. So that was Friday, and Monday evening. So basically 3 days later, Monday evening, the kids were acting up, and I forget, it was Brecken and Briar like spatting about something. And I raised my voice and got mad. And I could tell that I could tell my blood pressure was raising.
Mm-hmm.
So they basically had told me like, take your blood pressure over a certain period of time and if it doesn't come down, then don't hesitate, just come. So I took it. It was higher. It was like 155. Waited like 5 minutes, took it again, still hadn't come down. And so we just decided to get in the car and go, but we had to drive to Peoria, which is 45 minutes away. So I remember I let Dr. Leonardi know I was coming, all this stuff. And he basically just said, let them know that you're an OB patient and they'll send you right up so that you don't get stuck in the ER.
Mm-hmm.
So I just remember the drive over, like one, feeling super slow, but also like saying to Brian, just starting to cry and like, what if she doesn't make it? And he essentially was saying like, it's going to be fine. Let's just get there. I'm sure it's nothing. And from the time that we had the blood pressure incident rising to meeting Dr. Leonardi and going through all the plan, I felt like I had really had a week to just kind of come to terms with, if this isn't to be, like really at least starting to wrap my head around that there could be a negative outcome.
Right.
And so, obviously not hoping for that, but feeling like I had at least started to face that fact.
Yeah.
So we got to the ER. The ER was super packed. I was able to at least tell them like, I'm supposed to go straight to the OB floor. So they wheeled me up there and they got me in a room, and they were like, they couldn't find an IV, or they couldn't get the IV in. And my blood pressure at that point just kept rising. I just kept hearing them. They were taking it over and over. They had the cuff on, and it was like in the 150s, and then it was in the 160s, and then it was in the 180s. And then the highest I think I remember them saying was 210. And so
you didn't have a stroke.
I was going to say, can't you have like a heart attack when your blood pressure gets that high?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
You can stroke out for sure. So I just remember that room feeling very tiny and lots of people being in it. And there was so much hustling going on, and like just hustle and bustle. And Brian was like sitting in the corner of the room, and they had the TV on, and like the speaker for it on the bed was literally like blaring in my ear. So I just felt like there was just like so much noise and so much commotion. And at one point it was like, I remember having this like out of body experience where it was like, I was watching myself from up above, looking down on it. And like, it was like, I could see everything going on, and it was a very surreal experience. Like I felt like I was watching from up above instead of in my body. And so at that same point, while they're trying to get the IV in, they ended up giving me oral meds to try to get it going because they couldn't get the IV in quick enough. And the doctor had come in and was trying to do a sono, and I was kind of like glancing at the screen, trying to see like what she's watching for. And I could tell that she was like seemingly waiting to tell me something until they got the IV in, because she kept asking, do you have the IV in? And so once they did, and they had secured my blood pressure starting to come down, or at least getting it more under control, she said, I don't see a heartbeat. And what had been weird about that was just because literally like 2 minutes before that, I had felt her kick. And so I kept thinking, this can't be, it's got to be a mistake. Like, and so she's showing us on the screen. And I just remember as soon as she said that, Brian jumped up from his seat and was like, what? And he was just like panicked, and she's trying to show him on the screen that there should be blood flow coming in and out, and there wasn't. And I just remember I was like stone cold, like no emotion, just completely numb.
Probably just in shock.
Yeah.
Clearly in shock, just trying to like processed what she was telling me, thought for sure that they were wrong. Like maybe something miraculous was going to change or happen. They were going to start seeing like something on the screen again. And I just remember him starting to get really emotional. And so after that, they essentially moved me out of that like prep room into a birthing room.
Mhm.
And they essentially said that they were going to kind of went through the process and were like, okay, we're going to give you something that's going to induce the pregnancy. We're going to put you on magnesium so that your blood pressure stays in check. And then they just started handing us like pamphlets and all this kind of stuff for like after death preparation. And they're telling us that it's this folder. I mean, I'm like literally 5 minutes out from having learned that I have no heartbeat with my baby. And they're telling me that I can have her cremated, or I can put her in like a community cemetery, or we can bury her ourselves. And it's just like, it was just too much. Like,
Why don't they wait to have a conversation with you?
I know that it's probably just like, that's what they do every day, but
it seems so like
we had
unreasonable.
Well, and we had left the house at like 5. And so we hadn't had dinner, and it had been, it was already at this point, it was already like 7:30. And so, they said it would probably take 6 to 8 hours for the labor to be induced with, whatever the stuff that they were going to give me. And, so we were just like, can we just have a minute? Like, can we just have like some time to just think and like absorb everything that's going on.
Mm-hmm.
So they let us order food. And we probably waited like a good 2 hours. And then they were like, okay, we need to like, we need to get the process going. So they gave me the stuff to induce the labor. And then they also gave me the magnesium, and they were like, this is going to make you feel hot. And so what they did not tell me is that it literally feels like you are sitting in the pit of hell and a elephant is sitting on top of your chest. It was like the absolute worst experience I've ever had in my entire life.
I was gonna say,
just
like a lot of women have said that they like downplay the magnesium to you. And I think it's just because you probably like,
wouldn't take it if
you would probably decline the offer, or not the offer, but the notion.
I could feel, as soon as I took it, I could feel the heat coming from my forehead and just like coming down over my body. And it just felt like you were sitting in like the hot sun with no breeze. Like it was just like this intense heat. It made me super nauseous. So I started throwing up, and it was like just this heavy weight on my chest. And so, and it just didn't go down. I mean, I had to be on it for like a full 24 hours.
Oof.
And,
bringing a fan or anything?
So when I delivered Briggs, they gave me one because they had to give me magnesium. And that was totally different, but for whatever reason, they gave it to me afterwards because my blood pressure wasn't coming down.
Oh, wow.
And that experience was totally different. I don't know if they just gave me a bigger dose the second go round or the first time or what, but I didn't have a fan in my room until the next day. I don't remember a fan, at least. And so, anyway, that the initial was like, just felt like nauseous, sick to my stomach, and super hot. And then, the other thing that they weren't checking on me as often. So they didn't have someone physically in my room. So I had this like extreme paranoia that my blood pressure was going to spike when they were out of the room, or if like Brian was sleeping or something like that. And so I, felt like I couldn't fall asleep. So like the whole night, I just felt like I kept dozing off and then like waking up in a panic to like make sure I was still alive. Cause I just remember kept thinking like, I've got to be here for my family. I've got to be here for my kids. Like I've got to stay here. And, I remember like in that in and out of consciousness that at one of those points, I remember God telling me that, that you're going to have another baby, which I felt like was a very odd thing to hear and or feel when I'm still in the midst of like losing one,
Yeah.
You're like, but I want this baby.
Yeah, exactly. And those are your feelings. Right. And so So she came at like, I feel like it was like 4 a.m, something like that. And, I started losing a lot of blood. And so my blood pressure started dropping really heavily. And, so I just remember being like so lethargic that I couldn't hardly hold her or like move or keep my eyes open because I was just like so deathly tired.
Did your body
And
have like actual contractions?
yeah,
You
I
did.
mean, you didn't really feel them because they had given me an epidural. And
Okay.
so, but it was,
But
I
you
mean,
labored the same way you would have.
yeah, a little bit, but it's not the same because she was little. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? She was small enough that it's not the same as like when you're contracting
Can
a
you imagine your body going through like anxiety of your blood pressure spiking, the shock of finding out that you lost the baby, and then having to go in and like essentially birth this baby that you knew wasn't alive. Your body alone, just mental capacity as well as your physical body,
Right.
you had to have been shocked and tired and like just completely beyond. That's so much more than just like birthing a child. Like
Yeah.
that alone is traumatic. This is like traumatic times a million, you know?
Right.
Well, and a lot of it feels like a blur. There was a very like slow time where she came out. Plus, you're kind of nervous about what they're going to look like too, because you just don't know what to expect. You don't have a clue what it's going to be like. And they had put her in a little like crocheted blanket or whatever, so we were able to hold her and see her and stuff. So there's just also like anxiety with that, and you don't know exactly how you're going to feel because, you know, obviously they're not breathing.
Right.
And so it's just a lot of weird emotion. But then shortly after that, I started getting super tired to the point that I was having trouble like even holding her. And so Brian took her and my blood pressure started dropping so dramatically and I was losing a lot of blood that they had to bring up, the doctor had to come back in and they ended up doing like a bedside DNC because they didn't think to do a DNC outside of the birthing room, they would have had to put me under. And they're like, I wouldn't make it under anesthesia. So,
Jeez.
so they had to do it bedside and to make sure that they had gotten all of the tissue out and everything like that. But they had brought up, I remember looking over and there's literally like, they have like blood supply sitting there to do a blood transfusion because I was losing so much blood and my blood pressure was dropping so dramatically. So I'd gone from this like one extreme to the other where I was like off the charts stroke level to now like so low that I could crash. And so, I just remember like, again, like a flurry of people in and out of the room and Dr. Leonardi coming in at one point and talking to me. And, I just remember telling him, I have to be here for my kids. Like whatever you do, like make sure that I'm still here.
Mhm.
And he was like, I promise you, we're not going to lose you.
Yeah.
So after that, they like let me stay in the room for a couple hours. And I just remember I slept like the entire time. And then at like noon, they were like, okay, we're going to move you down to the women's floor now that you're up for it. And I was like, I don't even feel like I can open my eyes, let alone like move into a new bed.
Right.
And so they were like, well, we have to move you out of the birthing room, blah, blah, blah. So because of the magnesium that I'm on, plus my blood pressure dropping, I spent like the next 6 hours not being able to like hardly open my eyes. And there were so many people in and out of the room trying to ask me questions. And I just remember struggling to like keep my eyes open long enough to answer their question. Like a grief counselor had come by and like our cousin had stopped in to say hi. We had like nurses obviously were coming in and out and different things, but it wasn't till like 6 to 7 o'clock that night that I finally was able to like actually keep my eyes open.
Right.
But the magnesium messes with your, like, since it kind of like slows everything down, it messes with your eyesight. So it makes it feel like everything's like dragging. So like if you're looking here, it feels like your eyesight is like really slow. So it's just a really odd feeling. It makes you feel a little bit dizzy and like light on your feet. So you have to have assistance like to use the restroom and all this kind of stuff. So it was just like a very, very rough first day. And so I remember that night they brought in a fan because I was still so hot from the magnesium, and it was literally the coldest time of the year because it was January. It was when we had that like super cold, like it had gotten to like -20 outside. It was like that
polar
year that it was,
vortex, they call
yeah,
it. Yeah.
exactly. So the room was freezing. And I remember looking over at Brian, and he has like a hoodie over his head, like drawstrings pulled, and he's like in like multiple layers, like sleeping on the couch in the room. And I'm literally like stripped down to like the least amount of stuff I can be wearing, and I have a fan blowing on me. Like that was like the drastic difference between the two.
Right.
And so they let her stay in our room overnight. They had it was like just like you would have like the bassinet after you have a baby, but they have a cooling pad underneath it. So it allows essentially the baby, since it's a stillborn, to stay preserved, essentially, whatever you want to call it. So she was able to stay in our room overnight, which I felt like helped to be able to just give yourself time to like kind of, accept what's going on, because they were basically like, we can take her whenever you're ready. Like you can, whenever you're comfortable. They didn't put any pressure on us, which I was so appreciative for. And one of the things I was most appreciative for is that when she was first born, the nurses took a bunch of pictures, but I was so weak that I couldn't take any with her. And at the time I didn't feel good enough to do it. And they stayed. Sorry. They were from the OB floor, and they stayed after their shift was over and came down to my room and took pictures of us with her. They're like, we know you're going to want these later.
Mm-hmm.
So we just, we wanted to make sure that you had them, because they had gotten pictures of her and they had gotten pictures of her with Brian, but they hadn't got any of her with me.
Mm.
And so I'm so appreciative to them for having that sensitivity.
Right.
Because those are the only photos I have.
Yeah.
Of her with me holding her. And so it's just like the kindness that they showed in that moment, when they could have easily just been like, we did our job today, we're going home, to take extra time out of their day and their personal time to come down and make sure that we have those pictures has meant so much, because those are the pictures that I always go back to.
Mm-hmm.
And so so we got those pictures taken, and then we ended up the next morning having them go ahead and take her out. And I just remember it had been sitting next to my bed, so there was just like this huge kind of hole there when she left, because they took her down to the morgue. And Mom and Dad came up to see us, and Ash and Holly came, and I was in the hospital for, I want to say 5 days. It was like a really long time. So she had been taken out, and they wanted to make sure that my blood pressure was stable before they sent me home. I might not have been there 5 days, but it was at least 3.
Did Mom and Dad have anything to say when they came? Or do you remember?
Honestly, it's such a blur. I don't even remember. I feel like everybody was just trying to keep it light. You know, they wanted to like share their condolences, but like it was easy conversation.
Like how to talk about it. Yeah.
I'm trying to comfort you, not wanting to drag you down even further.
Yeah. And so I remember when we came home, I have this vivid memory because they brought us this like cloth box, and in it was the crocheted blanket that she was in, and the disc with all the pictures and like her hospital bracelet and things like that. And I looked in the back seat, and it's sitting in the car seat. And it just was like such a weird visual to know that instead of a baby that we were bringing home a box.
Mm-hmm.
And that's all you're left with. You're literally left with a box of pictures and some hospital bracelets and no child.
Right.
And then you're trying to figure out like how to, sift through all those emotions that you're having. Because Brian was really emotional there through all of like the physical aspects when I felt like I was pretty stoic. And then yet once we got past kind of the physical pieces of the process, I felt like he was pretty resolved. And that's when it would hit me at like really weird times.
Right.
And so, we ended up like a week later had to go, or it actually wasn't even a week later, a couple days later, the funeral home here in town did like a free service and like do the burial and everything for free for stillbirths, because it's obviously such a overwhelming experience and it's expensive. And so they try to alleviate a lot of the costs for the parents. And so we went and met with them, and I don't know, I guess what I thought I was going into, but she started asking like what we wanted in the little like brochure that you have at the funeral service. And she asked like what music we wanted to play and like, you know, who we wanted to be speaking, and like all these things that, one, that you're not planning to answer, and two, you don't want to be answering. I just remember having a pounding headache, and I was so angry. I was sitting there so mad. And she was like, she had stepped out of the room and to go check on something or take a phone call. And I remember Brian asking me a question, and I just remember I bit his head off, and he was like, "What is wrong with you?" And I was like, I don't want to be like figuring out what songs we're going to be playing at our baby's funeral. I just want my baby here. Like, it's just, you shouldn't be planning a funeral for your kid. Like, you should be like, I should be having her here. And I just remember having all this like sense of lashing out because I was so furious that, one, I had to be there, and two, that it was happening. And
something that was pretty unbelievable is your burial costs were going to be $7,000. Is that what it ended up being? Because the headstone and the vault. And we started a GoFundMe, and our customers and some family members covered the entire thing.
Yeah.
With
it ended up covering that whole thing plus hospital bills.
Yeah. It was like one of the biggest, like, or most generous acts of kindness I feel like I've ever been a part of. And I remember the funeral home guesstimated the total being about $7,000.
Yeah.
Or no. Yeah. Yeah. So that's what we put on the GoFundMe. And I was like, there's no way, like, we're going to meet it. Like, maybe we'll get a couple $100 or whatever. But I feel like our community wanted to be there for you so badly. And it was like, no one really knew like how to support you best. And they were sending like gifts to the office and like notes. And I mean, the outpouring of love specifically from our customer base was like, I mean, like,
so kind.
It was so amazing. And that's what I think is so crazy is like, you had like an army of people behind you in that season that like was just, it was just pretty incredible to watch. And it just like proved how special our community is, like how many people were like really ready to step in and be a part of helping you heal.
Well, and it just took something that was such a huge burden off of our shoulders. Cause you expect to go in and have hospital bills and things like that. When you deliver a baby, you don't expect to be buying a gravestone, Right. So, I mean, it's just all like very weird things that you're not expecting to go through.
Well, and I feel like it's kind of one of those things too, where you like kind of hate to ask for help. Yeah. And I remember I'm the one who brought it up and was like, a lot of people are asking how they can help. Like, should we just, can I do this for you? And you were like, because it kind of feels cringe, you know what I mean? But like the customers were like, no, we want, even if it's $5 to like be able to contribute. So it's kind of special to know that like that was purchased by the community. Like her little gravestone is like, has all of them a part of it, which I think is really like kind of a special thought to think about.
Yeah, definitely. Well, we ended up doing the funeral with just our family, because I just felt like it's kind of a weird process. Like, I don't know why it didn't feel like something that I wanted a lot of people to be there and be a part of. So we just had it be the 5 of us. And Brecken had made this little like picture for her that had a picture of her and Briar, and she had a sad face. And I just remember it was like, it was just sweet to like see her perspective of it, of like her little brain understanding that she had this baby sister that, wasn't going to be here anymore and was up in heaven. And she had made these little like beads that she had wanted to put in her casket with her. So we basically buried her with that picture and the picture of us all on the beach together. And then these little, like, she made like a dolphin out of beads and stuff like that. She put it in there with her.
So tell them what Brecken said on the way to the funeral home.
Something about where heaven's located, right?
Yeah. She's like, I didn't know this is, you were driving to the funeral.
Oh, that's right.
Because you told him Briar had gone to heaven, and she said, I didn't know this was the way to heaven or something like that. Like, I didn't know this is how you got to heaven. And you're like, yeah, Airport Road. That's where it's at. I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
She's buried a little bit outside town, isn't she?
Yeah. So that was kind of like, that was the conversation that I felt like took the longest, because Brian and I couldn't agree what we wanted to do with her, because it was like, I didn't want her in a community casket, because it's like her name's not even on the stone. It's just like a date, and then it can be with like a bunch of other babies, and she'd be over in Peoria, or we could cremate her. But I just felt like that seemed like I didn't know what I would do with the cremated remains. Like,
right.
It's not like you're going to stick her on a shelf in your closet. Like, it just, it's just like, it's a very weird thing to have to like think about.
Right.
And then, but if you're going to bury her, Brian and I don't have plots, and you're like, it's not something you've even contemplated. So like, I didn't know where we wanted to be buried. It was just a lot. And so, my mom has a plot, or our mom has a plot, that our grandma had purchased for her. And so they were saying that we could put her there until we figured out what we wanted to do, which I liked the idea of. But then, the idea of having to move her later just seemed kind of odd. So long story short, we ended up buying plots out in a cemetery where Brian's family is buried, and she's at the head of our plots. So that's where she's at. And the nice part about it is Brian farms out there. So like in the fall, when we go out to, see him farming, the kids always want to go to the grave. And I was glad that we had picked something physical rather than cremation, just from the standpoint that it's been a nice way for the kids to be able to make sense of it and know that that's where she's at.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, we did the funeral. And then I just remember the time after that, like when I look back at photos, I feel like I felt I had a weird sense of peace about the whole thing. But at the same time, I think there was a piece of me that was trying to purposely distract myself, because I like literally a month later, I planned our cousin's like 40th birthday party. That was when we did the Friends party. We went to the Kelly Clarkson concert. I planned your 30th birthday. Like, it was just like a lot of stuff going on all in one year.
Like, let me just plan some parties. This will be fine.
Yeah. And
three big parties. That's crazy to think about.
Yeah. So when I think about like all that stuff that I did during that time, it seems like I remember feeling okay at the time it was all going on, but thinking back that was the year it all happened, it feels a little odd that I was doing all that. So I feel like there was almost like a subconscious trying to distract, if you will. So, but one of the best pieces of advice I felt like we got was making sure that we went to grief counseling afterwards, because our way of grieving is so different. Like I was saying, Brian was very emotional in the physical aspects of it, like when she was born, when we found out she had no heartbeat, when we buried her, like when we had the funeral. And I felt like I was emotional at all the times in between, because you just, one that you go through you're going through the actual physical aspect of it yourself. Your body's going through so much and your hormones are going all over the place. And then in addition to that, since you carried her and you felt her kick and, things that he obviously wouldn't be able to experience, it's just a different experience of what you both feel and go through. And I feel like, it was easy. It helped us to be able to recognize that we are going to grieve it differently, and that's okay. And that, that we can't resent each other for the way that we grieve. Like that if one is seemingly doing better than the other,
Right.
quicker, that sort of thing. Because I went through like a whole like why process, you know, thinking through like if I hadn't gotten upset that night, if I hadn't gotten the flu, because it essentially ended up being at some point in time in the process, the placenta didn't fully attach the way that it was supposed to. And so it wasn't allowing blood flow and properly to the baby. And in addition to that, it caused my blood pressure to rise and it caused slow growth in her. And so of course I, you know, thinking through that the placenta really attaches kind of in that first 12 weeks. And that was when I had the flu. So of course I'm sitting there thinking like, it has to be part of that, you know? And so if I, you know, if I hadn't gotten the flu, if I hadn't gotten upset, if they, you know, maybe if they had noticed something at the 20-week appointment, would it have changed the outcome? Would I have done something different? Would she have been able to make it to viability? Would, you know, because I was literally like a week away from being able to at least have a chance at saving her. And so, so I feel like after the fact, they always say you have this like grief cycle. You have the anger, you have the sadness, you have the questioning, and then you have the acceptance. That's not the order, but you somewhere in the midst of that. And so, one of the things that really helped me is I remember Granger Smith is a country singer and his son was 3 and drowned in the family pool. And I remember listening to an interview of him and his wife. And I remember them saying that it wasn't, his time here was only meant to be to that point. And because you can spend so much time in the what could have been, because that's what you're grieving, because you don't know her or her personality. So you're grieving the what could have been, what she would be like at 2 and 5 and 10 and all those things. And I just remember them having so much resolve in the fact that like his time on earth was only meant to be to this point. And that was, you know, that was his time. And I felt like it helped me kind of accept that in my head, that she wasn't meant to be here, that her time here was that, and that was all that we got with her. And that I can't focus on all the could have beens, that I had to just accept that this was, you know, the amount of time that she was meant to be.
Well, and I think about the way the Lord uses people's stories. And I mean, even, you know, from me and Whitney's perspective in our family, like when you sent the group chat about them not finding a heartbeat and you were going into labor, I just remember being like, me and Whitney were downstairs in her basement and just kind of sitting in shock, both like getting emotional and kind of trying to process what you were going through. And because the 3 of us are so close, I feel like we have sort of like a twin energy going on, maybe like a triplet energy. And like, I feel like walking through the emotions of losing Briar, it felt like I lost a child. It was like, I felt so closely tied to how you were doing with it that I felt like it was like my story as much as it was, not as much as it was yours, but you know what I mean? Like that we felt the emotion so deeply with you. And I feel like because you're the oldest, there's a tendency for me to look to you guys to be like, okay, how are they going to react will dictate how I feel. And I think it was Dad that said like, how are you feeling? And you said, these are the moments in your life that you can either question the Lord and turn away from God, or to say God's still good and to continue to like, you know, weather life in you know, in relationship with the Lord. And there are those defining moments in your life where you can say like, why is this happening to me? And I think a lot of people use that opportunity as a way to turn away from their relationship with God. But I remember you said, like, I can't imagine walking through this without faith. Like, how could we possibly use this as an excuse to deny the Lord when you feel like the Lord was all over it? And then a couple of weeks later, I don't know if you want to share the fire story.
Remember? I don't know if I remember it.
So a couple of weeks later, so there was a lot of tumultuous things happening in our world around this time. Was this 2018?
2019.
So our grandmother passed away like a week and a half later, which was literally
A huge blow.
horrible. Because Grandma Tilly was
It was like Valentine's Day.
Yeah, she was like the true matriarch of a family, just like pretty much like a second mother to us. And all three of us had an incredibly close relationship with her. And we talked about this the first time we talked about grief, but we were saying like, people don't really like give grace for grieving grandparents. They're just like, oh, they're old. And it's so different if you're like, oh, my grandfather just died versus like my brother just died. You know what I mean?
For sure.
There's a huge difference, which I think is BS. I think that's so, I mean, regardless if they were old or not, you should be able to grieve that person the way that you want to grieve. But anyways, a couple weeks later, the business was at like a really rocky place. And we had gone through a pretty big layoff a couple months before. We had racked up some debt and we were kind of like, oh no, what do we do? And I think all three of us had gotten to a place where we were like surrendering if we needed to give it up or not. And so we all sat in your office and we all looked around and you were like, what should we do?
It's because I came back from maternity leave and we had racked up $300,000 on the credit card in inventory. And because I hadn't been there to be watching it all, there wasn't like a stop on like, hey, we need to do this or that. And so we came back to this huge, massive debt that we couldn't pay. And it was, the cash flow was running out. We had this huge load of expense and we were like, what do we do?
Yeah, it was like suffocating essentially. And I just remember all three of us kind of sat there and we were like, okay, this is over. Like, I don't know how else to say it. We're just like, we're done. And like, none of us had any good ideas. And I just remember Tara goes, well, I guess we pray about it and see what happens. And you just got up and like, there was a lot of silence and me and Whitney both cried because we both said, we're going to have to move in with our parents. And
it was the first time that one of us didn't have an idea.
Yeah.
It was the first time that one of the three of us didn't say, I'll pick up the pieces while the other two, like, lick their wounds. It was like, we all just sat there in silence and looked at each other and were as clueless as the next. And
well, and if we couldn't have paid this stuff off, we would have all had to file personal bankruptcy because our names were on it. So,
and unfortunately, it was a personal credit card in my name. And so my credit was on the line and it was, there just wasn't a lot of great options.
It was a bad time all around, but long story short, you had gone home and you had gotten the scripture about Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And what's crazy is though this
with that is that time, that was the time when I went to Eastview. It was like the first time we went back because we were doing online church and they sang Another in the Fire. And I sobbed and sobbed. And that was when I tried out for the team because I was like, I might have to live in my parents' basement, but I'm going to sing for the Lord.
Well, and what I was going to say is I feel like though the time was tumultuous, the connection with customers and like your story was being used in like an insane way. I mean, people were coming out of the woodwork to share their either stillborn or some sort of like loss story with you, or what's the word I'm looking for? Miscarriage. Sorry. And so that was just this like crazy season where we felt like the Lord was using us to speak a lot. And we were speaking from a place of like, we don't have this figured out. We're actually going through a time where we feel like a fraud because we were trying to keep business status quo and move, but we were like, it was like a time where like nothing made sense, but the only thing we knew to do was to keep, why am I getting emotional? To keep sharing about Jesus. And I felt like that was the season where we were like, this makes no sense. How are we going to stay open? And how are we going to do this? But we were really incredibly open with our faith and like how we were processing what happened with Briar, what was happening with grandma. To some extent we shared about the business, but for the most part, I always joke, nobody wants to shop with a loser. So I was like, we just got to keep moving. Like we got to keep, like trucking along because every business hits rough patches. Ours was just very large.
Yeah.
This was a major speed bump, if you will. And so anyways, you had gotten that story about Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and you said, I feel like what the Lord is saying is that we're going through a refining fire so that we can come out with it, out of this fire with buckets of water for others. Don't cry, you're gonna make me cry. And I remember, I don't know if this is too personal to share, but I just remember early on in our business, me and Whitney were always saying, like, God spoke to me in this way. And you would be like, how is he talking to you? Like, how is he sharing? And we'd be like, I don't know, we just hear him, or like we get the scripture, like our mom would share things with you. And I felt like
you'd be like, okay, that's great, but I still need to pay the bills.
Yeah, you'd be like, it's black and white. We have to pay state sales tax. So, and we would always have this like war between like the natural and the supernatural of like our spiritual hearts knowing like we've been called to do this versus in the natural bills need to get paid. And it was like this, like you always say, like you're battling like faith and fear. And it's like you believe in your faith, obviously, that the Lord can do anything, but the fear of the natural makes you want to panic and like spiral. And so, but I felt like in that season, like God really like shaped you. And I feel like I looked up to you. I mean, I always look up to you, but I looked up to you so much in that season because I felt like your faith was so incredibly unwavering. And I feel like the Lord was giving you like such specific words for the business where you used to come to us and be like, is the Lord telling you anything? And we were going to you and being like, what's the Lord telling you? Like you were getting such profound things that the Lord, like deep, profound words that the Lord was sharing about what we were supposed to do in the business. And I kept remembering you saying like, we just have to take it one day at a time. Like the Lord's, and you were, every morning Tara was sharing her devotional with us. And like, of course, everything was like very poignant and specific to what we were going through. It was as if God like pre-wrote this book in the exact days. It was like almost bizarre, like to the point where you're like, this is getting weird. Like this
the
is
devotional. And I was going to share that because the devotional that somebody sent me on that day that it happened.
Mhm.
It was the actual day that she was born. So it was January 22nd, 2019. And it says, God is saying to you today, I have allowed your trials to come to make you stronger in me. What the devil intended for evil, I will use for good. Through it all, you are still here. And I'm about to blow your mind with blessings, good health, peace, love, and favor. And that one just like hit so crazy weird because it was like, you're still here. And that was one of my biggest fears going through that is leaving my family behind and just, give you good health. And so it was bizarre during that time, how everything felt like it spoke directly to us.
I was going to say too, I remember Mom, when we kept asking like, what's the reason? Like, why did this happen? And Mom said, you're putting too much pressure on a baby. Like, you're putting so much emphasis on this little baby that like, you have to just, sometimes like life is unanswered. But what I think is so cool about Briar is that like her life and what she stood for in so many people's lives at that time was so incredibly impactful. Like, we weren't putting pressure on her, but like the value of what Briar taught all of us and how she completely like shaped our faith and so many other people's faith, I think is like astounding to see how much her little 22 weeks of life actually like changed a huge community of people. And I think, like I said, I feel like when Mom was talking about prayer to me with fertility and how she was saying like when someone's praying on behalf of you, they're in it to see the miracle with you and it affects their faith. Like I feel like people were so affected by how strong you were and how you never like denounced what you believed. And I think that I just remember getting that specific message about you from I'm not joking, like hundreds of people and our employees and people that were close to you, that you were like a pillar of strength, of people looking up to you and saying, like, because of how Tara handled this and believed in the Lord, it made me want to be closer to the Lord. And I think that's like as good of a gift of anything that Briar could have brought.
Well, I think it's
us.
easy to think that, I mean, because you just remember like when it happened and she's born, you're immediately like, now what? You know, like, what am I going to do? Like, immediately be like, God sucks. And I'm just going to turn my
Right.
back on everything that I've known and believed for my entire life because
Yeah.
of this situation that has happened.
Right.
Or, you know, the alternative didn't seem better than what was in front of you and what
Yeah.
you've known to be true your entire life. And you're not guaranteed that everything's going to go exactly according to plan, you know?
Yeah.
And I think that that's extremely hard to accept about life, but
Mhm.
there was never, in my mind, there was never two choices. There was
Yeah.
only one. And I think but you're definitely faced with that when something like that happens.
Mhm. And I
Also,
think that
it's
speaks
important.
Go ahead.
I was like, I feel like it's important to note too that grief is not linear.
Mhm.
It can hit at any time,
Mhm.
and you might have some high highs and low lows, but like you can maybe remember something and it could hit you.
Mhm.
So it's not like just because time has passed on, you're over it. Like this will always affect you and the
Yeah.
rest of us. Like there'll be things that
Time really heals nothing. I mean, I know they say time heals all wounds, and it really heals nothing. And I know that that's
it really doesn't.
Yeah.
You
No,
just
it's so
end up
true. I'm laughing
growing
because it's
around it.
ironic.
I was going to say, I think you end up learning to, the further removed you are from it, it does get easier, but it doesn't change the emotions around it. Like I was just, even when I was writing everything down today, just to like make mental notes, you're immediately back in that moment all over again. Like emotions that you haven't tapped into for years, all of a sudden are very raw and right at the surface again. And so it really doesn't change anything besides the fact that time helps you deal with it better, I guess. And someone described grief to me once. I think it was Tammy that said, grief comes in waves. Sometimes it's like a light tide, and other times it's like a tidal wave that's trying to pull you under. And that's exactly what it feels like. Sometimes it's, when I think about her, my heart physically gets heavy. Like I can feel like this added weight because it hurts my heart to like think about that time and that she's not here. And so I think, like, if I were to give people advice, I kind of wrote down a couple things. Is one, to for sure get counseling. Like I feel like that's extremely important. I think if you're in the moment at the hospital too, like take all the pictures. It does feel weird. I mean, it's something that you think you're going to remember forever and you don't. I mean, you just forget. And those things are the things that you'll cherish for sure. But like Whit said, grief's not linear. Like it's going to, I think it's easy. Initially, everyone's around, and so they're asking you how you're doing and how you're feeling and bringing you food and all that kind of stuff. And then, a month later, they're on with their own lives and you're left still picking up the pieces. And you don't want to be the downer that's still upset about the situation, because people don't know how to act. Like they don't know what to do. They don't want everybody, it's kind of that, like the Friends episode when, Peter Selleck was Tom Selleck, when he was like, that didn't sound right. When he said that everybody looks at you and goes, "Aw," and turns their head. That's how it feels. Like people are looking at you with like this sad look on their face because they're not sure how you're going to react. And so you don't want to be the one that's always upset or sad or make other people feel awkward. But you have to give yourself grace, because it's not something that you get over right away, and you won't. ever get over it fully, like it's something that you just learn to live with. But I also feel like you have to give grace to your friends and family because they are not going to say the right things. People say really stupid stuff in the moment because they don't know what to say or what to do. And so you have to give them grace, because when they haven't experienced what you've experienced, they're well-intended, but so you have to give those people grace. You can't be upset with them for not knowing how best to handle it.
But also on the flip side of that, if you have someone that is grieving, don't try to come at it with well-intended words. Just be there for them.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, don't try to say something that's going to be helpful. Just literally be the shoulder to cry on, because I think that that's the hard part, is people want to tell you something, make you feel better, and it doesn't make you feel better. It's not, there's nothing you could say that could make you feel better in the moment. You just really are looking for someone to just be there and listen.
One of the stages of grief is anger. So even if you do say something that may be totally fine and like completely help comfort them, they could be angry and just try to lash out too. So it goes on both sides of one, not really understanding what the person's going through, but then the person themselves could also not really know how to make sense of their feelings and only know how to lash out. So just kind of having grace on both sides, knowing that what you're going to say might not help, but just your presence would be helpful, but also giving grace to the person who's grieving and just knowing that they're going through a lot, even if they do lash out, or even if they're still trying to make sense of their emotions through it all.
One sweet little thing, and then I have one last question for Tara, or any other thoughts you want to add, but one sweet little thing that happened was, I'm going to try to say this without crying. When our grandma was dying, well, they ended up resuscitating her, and which I don't think she wanted, but what was sweet about that process was she got to say goodbye to every single grandkid. And there's 17 of us, 16 or 20. There's a lot of us, so we'll just say that. And I especially was like dying to talk to her, because I was like, I just have to, chat with her one last time. But when Tara got to see Grandma, what did you say to her?
I asked her to hold my baby.
Yeah. And she said she would.
It was a sweet moment, because it was really one of the last times she was lucid before she died. She got through all of the phone calls with all of the grandkids and her own kids. And then after that, she pretty much wasn't there anymore.
Yeah. But it was sweet that she had that moment. It was like her body knew she needed to hold out, which is kind of funny, because this poor 94-year-old woman is like on her deathbed, and each of the 17 grandkids are like, wait, I need to call her. She had to talk to 17 of us, or 16 of us, however many there were. But I just remember like you telling us that story, and how, first of all, that's just so how she was so generous with her time and loved her family so well, but she assured you that that was the first thing she would do when she got to heaven. I just thought that was such a sweet picture of redemption, of like how, this world is but a vapor, and, on the other side of it, when we get to see, the other side of this world. But also our cousins, who you're just talking about, Tammy, they lost their mom, our aunt, when we were really young, to a car accident. And I just remember it was really cute, because Heidi, our cousin, was like, oh, Tara, don't you worry. Aunt Kathy, our mom, is such a baby hog. She's going to see Briar coming up there and going to be shoving people out of the way to go grab that baby. And so just knowing that Aunt Kathy's up there and Grandma Tilly's up there, just probably loving on Briar, just makes my heart, a little happy, because Aunt Kathy was also just pretty much one of the best people that's ever lived on this earth. And she's such like the salt of the earth, the most compassionate person ever. And just knowing that she's up there in good hands, which is sweet to think about, just kind of like a redeeming quality of it. But I thought that was really cute that Heidi was like, Mom, she's such a baby hog. But anyways, my closing question, or if you wanted to add any other things, is how are you now?
Well, the only things I was going to add is just to celebrate the birthdays. Because I feel like it's a way to basically like honor their life. And my two closest friends this last anniversary had gotten her little footprints printed on a sticker, and they essentially got like each year they're going to get books that are age appropriate for the age that she would have been, and then donate them somewhere with the little sticker inside that says in memory of Briar.
So sweet.
And so, yeah, it was so kind. And so I feel like just stuff like that is a way for your kids and your family to just have a way to like honor her. We have a birthday cake for her every year. And I felt like a good thing that my doctor told me too, is that the week of the anniversary of it, whether it's your due date or like when she was born, your body naturally is going to feel these emotions. And so if you feel like you're feeling off, that's natural because your body remembers. And so like, give yourself grace with that too. Yeah. And so they're just some of the things that I would say as pieces of advice, and that they're just, I don't feel like you should have anybody push you into a timeline as to when you should be okay and or quote unquote over it. Cause I feel like when people don't know how to handle it, they just want you to be better so that they don't feel awkward. And so I just would say, don't ever let anyone push you into a timeline of when you should be better.
And don't like shame yourself if you feel a wave of grief from like a memory or something. I mean, we were joking that every time we smell baked bread, I cry. Like it's just like with our grandma, like there's moments where it hits me like a ton of bricks, and then I'll be like a mess, and Phil will be like, Grandma Tilly, like he'll just like know that it was her. And I'm like, yeah, I just miss her. And I think that's okay. Like I think that normalizing grief, like you said, that it's not linear. It's not like, oh, it's only been 6 months, so she's still okay. But 3 years down the line, it's not normal. Like it's normal to feel sad and feel like you're missing someone, that you've lost. And so even if your emotions can be processed in different ways, like you're saying, whether it's outwardly or inwardly, it's okay to feel those things.
And I would say, the more time that has passed, the easier it has gotten. Like, obviously we have since had Briggs, and when I first got pregnant with him, I was terrified to go through the process again. We thankfully had gotten the placenta tested to see if it was a genetic abnormality or if it was just a complete fluke. And they told us it was a total fluke and there was nothing we could have done, that she would have never made it regardless of anything we had done. But it also didn't prevent us from getting pregnant again. But there was also a chance that you could get preeclampsia again if I did get pregnant. So they monitored me closely, but I just remember having this like anxiety of like, okay, I need to keep myself calm because I can't be anxious for this pregnancy, but at the same time, like terrified. Like I still have, to this day, I went in for my pre-op for my tummy tuck, and the blood pressure cuff gives me PTSD. Like it's every single time my blood pressure is elevated when they do that cuff, because the noise of it filling up gives me these really weird feelings. And so they have to do a manual blood pressure read on me every single time. So there's just stuff like that that's just not going to go away. Some of it's just triggers.
I also remember when you found out that Briggs was a boy, because you had originally been like, okay, God's giving me another baby. It's going to be another girl. I'm going to have the 4 girls. And when you found out that Briggs was a boy, that was a point too where you grieved as well, because you kind of had to let go of this idea of having 4 little women. Yeah. And that was something you probably didn't see coming,
because the pregnancy felt exactly like the other ones. Like nothing was different about it. I was carrying the same way. I thought for sure that it was a girl. And what had been weird about it is that when I had gotten pregnant, or I can't remember if I was already pregnant or if it was before I remember God telling me when I was in the car somewhere that we were going to have another baby. It was going to be a boy, and it was going to be the balm for my soul that I never knew I needed. And I remember kind of like casting it off, because I was like, no, we're not going to have a boy. It's going to be a girl. But in my head, when we found out that it was a boy, I remember having anger, thinking like, the least that you could do is give me another girl. And
Mhm.
it's so stupid hearing it now, but like at the time, that's how I felt. Like if you're going to take one away, which I say that loosely, but you know, if you're going to lose one, it feels like at least give me another girl, you know?
Mhm.
And so I remember I dealt with those feelings of that when we found out that Briggs was a boy. And I wrestled with that for quite a while, like just having, kind of going back through all those emotions, because all I knew was girls. All we had was girls. We were going to have 4 girls. When I'd see people with 4 girls, like it just like all those things. And now I was having to like rewrap my head around like, okay, we're going to have a boy in the mix of this. What's that going to be like after 3 girls? Like just, you know, it's just a totally different mindset than what I had been used to.
Briggs just got
And
some boy toys from Whit's house, and he didn't know what to do with himself. He's like,
But-
Jess.
but that little boy is exactly everything God said he would be and more. Like he is absolutely the balm for my soul. Like he just, you can't look at him without smiling.
You really can't.
Whit
'Cause
says
usually he's just sitting there like just happy and smiling at you.
he's always happy. He's got this cute little dimple. He's got these crazy curls going on, and he is just got like the sweetest little heart. He's just like good. And Whit explained it best that he's an elephant that thinks he's a gazelle.
And he's always wearing his yellow boots while doing it.
Oh, he's wearing heel boots. So anyway, to wrap it up, as far as how I'm doing now, I feel like I have gotten to a place of acceptance, you know, probably at least 2 years ago with it all. And while you still, you know, anytime I visit her grave, or, you know, you still have those moments where you look out and you see, like, I'll see the kids sitting on the side of the pool, or, you know, and know that there should be one more head out there, and there's not, you know. You still have those moments that hit you at really weird times. But I would say for the most part, I feel like I've been able to get to a place of peace with it and acceptance of it.
Another thing too is if you are feeling those feelings, feel them. Like don't avoid them. Don't try to, you know, distract yourself. Sit in the feelings, name the feelings, process them, and move forward. Otherwise, you're going to store them up and you won't know what to do with them. It might come out as anger. It might come out as other things. But I think it's smart to feel the feelings, acknowledge them, name them, process them, and then give yourself grace for feeling them, because that's totally normal. I think it gets dangerous when you try to stuff them down. And comes out in other ways, you know?
Or trying to shame yourself for not being over it, you know?
Yeah.
But the best thing that I can ever recommend to somebody is for sure going to counseling. I mean, that was the best thing that we did, because it gave a voice to the feelings that you were feeling, and just being able to put like acknowledgement to all of that emotion.
Yeah.
So that was probably the best thing that we ever did.
Well, we appreciate you being vulnerable enough to share this. I think the reason that we choose to share our stories is because of how we feel like it can help others and be a connection point. I think it's something that up until recently, maybe a lot of women, or maybe a lot of women still don't feel comfortable sharing about, because even though you had a stillbirth, some people still categorize it as just a miscarriage. And you're like, no, like I birthed this child, you know? And I think that there's a lot of women that feel like, oh, it happens to everybody and I just need to get over it and move on. And instead of normalizing the feelings of like how, like you said, the trauma that not only happens to your body, but also the emotions that you go through with the loss of a child, regardless of what phase you lose the child at. And so I feel like it's good for us to have, you know, silly conversations about what we would change about our husbands, but also so it's good to process the vulnerable side of life too, to make other people, like we said, feel comfortable sitting at our table. Like that's the whole line of this podcast, is that women feel, you know, comfortable and confident being part of this community, and that they don't feel alone. And I think that that's the best part.
I just don't want the conversation to be taboo, whether you have lost a baby. Like what what I shouldn't say I didn't like, that's poor wording. What I felt like people had a tendency to do after the fact is they would say, I lost a baby at 8 weeks or 12 weeks. I know that's not as big of a deal as you losing a baby at 23. And I was
grief
like,
is grief.
yeah,
Yeah.
There's no comparison.
yeah.
You know?
And I just felt like mine doesn't trump yours. Like,
Yeah.
right. A loss is a loss. And
Mhm.
you had love and feelings attached to that pregnancy, regardless of how many weeks you were. You might have just missed your, period and just found out that you're pregnant. It's still a loss. And
Mhm.
so I just, I feel like that it's so taboo. And sometimes people feel like embarrassed to talk about feelings behind it, especially if you lose the pregnancy early on. And I
Mhm.
think that that's stupid. Even I was just watching Virgin River, and one of the gals gets pregnant. Well, I was just thinking, they talk about this and he says, shouldn't we wait to tell people until after the first trimester? And I was like, that's such a dumb thing
Yeah.
that people have to do, because it's really your own feelings about it, that if for some reason something happened before that, but like, then if something does happen, why do you have to suffer in silence because you can't announce
Yeah.
it to people?
Exactly.
Right.
Like, it's just super dumb that society has kind of made it that way. Like, oh, we can't tell anybody until we make it past the first 12 weeks.
Yeah, like if someone says something at 6 weeks, you're like, oh, I
Yeah.
can't believe you're already telling me that you're pregnant. You're like, no, I'm 6 weeks pregnant. That's a long freaking time to be pregnant already. Like,
Yeah.
I agree. I don't know if I'll wait. I'm going to tell you guys right away. I'll probably tell you before I tell Phil. I'm just kidding. No, I agree with that. And I've heard that so much from the infertility side of people feeling like, one, they don't know who to share with, and two, they feel embarrassed about their story, or like feel like, I don't know how to share this in a way that, or who to share it with that hasn't experienced it as well. And so I feel like
Yeah.
it feels like a really lonely thing to walk through. And
Also,
so,
too, it's almost like self-preservation. Like, you want
yeah.
to protect yourself from what other people might say about it. Or I remember you wanting to kind of protect Briar and not wanting to share photos of her because you didn't want people giving their opinions about it,
Mhm.
you know? And
Yeah.
I think those feelings are valid. I don't think you need to like feel like you have to share anything. You can always protect whatever you want to protect, but also you shouldn't also have to feel fear
Mhm.
from other people's opinions about
Yeah.
it. Shouldn't be taboo, you know?
Yeah. Well, this was a heavier topic, which we know we haven't done a lot of in the past couple of months, but we do have a lot of things we would love to be able to unpack and chat with you guys. So we appreciate you guys being here. We appreciate this. No, we know it's a long episode. We'll probably keep it as one just because it doesn't really make sense to break it up as two. So you can listen to this at your leisure and let us know what you think. And if you have a story of grief or loss, we hope that this helped bring a little bit more comfort and also just helping you feel a little bit less alone in this. So thank you guys so much for listening to the Sisterhood Society podcast. We love you guys so much. If you love what you heard the last couple of weeks, you can subscribe on Apple Podcasts, give us a review. You can also subscribe to YouTube if you like the video version of our podcast, and we will see you in the next one. Bye.
Thanks.